Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ICommunicate, Finding Your Voice. And hope you're having a wonderful day. And it is a special time here in the city of Boston. Seems like every sports team is doing well. And if you look at what the Red Sox have accomplished the last few nights and getting ready to be one game within making it to the World Series. And today is a very special show. I'm honored to have a guest on today, Dale Scott, former Major League Baseball, recently retired Major League Baseball umpire, who in a very timely visit is joining us. Dale, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I'm so glad to be here, Mark. Thank you.
So, Dale, here we are right in the thick of the NLCS and ALCS, and I noticed in doing some research on you that the pitcher tonight for the Houston Astros, you have some history with this guy. You were part of the umpiring crew who saw him throw a no-hitter.
I saw him throw a no-hitter twice. I was on the bases for, I believe he's only had two no-hitters, and I was on the bases for both of them. One was in Toronto, and one was in Detroit, I believe.
So, Dale, quick question about that. You know, there's all this talk when a pitcher's throwing a no-hitter that no one wants superstition, no one will talk to them, and no one does anything, and the players are on edge. What's it like for the umpires involved in a game like that when a pitcher's throwing a no-hitter?
Well, you know, as each inning, goes in the history books, and there's a no hit as we get closer to the seventh, eighth, ninth inning. It's you know what's going on out there. Obviously, I had one no hitter behind the plate in my career. Scott Erickson threw one against the Brewers when he was pitching for the Twins back in '94 in the Metrodome. It's one of those things where, obviously, as you get closer to the seventh, eighth, ninth, you don't want to be the one that the quote unquote controversy starts up and could have cost him a no hitter. A lot of guys say, well, the plate umpire has the most pressure. Well, that's true, but the base umpires do also. I mean, the first base umpire, that bang play at first, it might be ruled a hit if he's safe. I mean, you don't want to miss a play there. The other umpires, what if there's a catch, no catch in the outfield? You call a no catch that is ruled a hit, and you make a mistake there. One thing we do have though now with replay, and I know we're going to get to that a little later, but that'll help eliminate those issues. But there's the umpires feel it. Everybody on the field feels it. And you just try to do your job and kind of notch it up just another knob or two and just see what happens.
So, Dale, I want to talk a little bit about your background, your history. I know you started umpiring when you were 15, but I guess I want to ask, what was the inspiration to pursue a career in umpiring? It's such a unique calling. Who are your influences, and how did you build the confidence to know that you'd make it to the bigs?
Well, I always used to say, if you want to umpire or officiate in any sport, you must enjoy verbal abuse, because that's what you get a lot of. I perfect. I'm very good at that. But here was the thing with my background. I loved baseball as a kid growing up. My grandparents on my mom's side lived in L.A., so I was a Dodger fan. Of course, there were no Mariners here in the Northwest when I was young, and I was just pretty much convinced that I was going to be the first baseman for the Dodgers when I grow up. Well, the only problem with that, Mark, is that I couldn't hit, run, field, or throw, and those are pretty important things to be a baseball player. So when my illustrious playing career was over at a very young age, I wanted to stay involved in baseball if I could. I was 15 years old, and if you're not playing and you're pretty much too young to be a coach. Not that I would be any good at that anyway. But I had a friend who had umpired the summer before, done some little league and stuff, and he suggested umpiring. He said, you're still involved in the game, and also it's a chance to make a little bit of money. And of course, in my playing career, I had spent a lot of time at the bench, so I watched a lot of umpires, and they always did different styles, not only the games that I participated in, so to speak, but growing up in Eugene, Oregon, the Eugene Emeralds was a AAA team for the Phillies at the time. And my dad's company got box seats for all the games, and a lot of times we used them. And so we used to go to games all the time. And And I used to watch the umpires there. And back then, the umpires that came through that league were Bruce Fleming and you had Terry Tata, and you had I can't think of the names now, but a lot of the guys that made it to the big leagues in the early '70s in the National League, especially, had come through Eugene. So these were names that I knew and were familiar with. So when I was 15. This friend suggested I go to umpire school, he suggested I start umpiring, and I thought, that's a pretty good idea. Maybe I'll try that. And I got signed up and started umpiring when I was that age, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's not for everybody. There's no doubt, but the challenge of every day you walk on the field, or in other sports you walk on the court, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, you could have a no-hitter that day. You could have a perfect game that day. You could have a 19-inning game that day. You could have a triple play and 2 obstructions that day, or so. Who knows what you may have, because every game is different, and you have to be ready for that challenge and ready to deal with whatever comes your way. And so it was something I really fell into. I enjoyed. I also started officiating basketball and football just up to the high school level a couple of years after that. I did that for 20 years each, as I also did baseball.
So, Dale, so few people can experience what you have. You think about professional athletes that make it to the majors in any sport. Can you simply describe when you got the call to be umpiring Major League Baseball games and you were called up, describe that feeling for yourself?
Well, I've never won Powerball, but I'm guessing it's close to that. It's quite a process. I mean, just the fact that if you are in the top part of your class in umpire school and are selected to go to the advanced 1-week school after umpire school, that's a big speed bump right there to get over, because so many people don't even get to that point. I mean, in umpire school, typically. And there are 2 schools. Typically, every year, there's approximately 150 to 200 students combined, counting both schools, and only the top 25 from each school go to the 1-week school. So that wow. Right there is a big hurdle to get over. And then from the 1-week school, the advanced school, there's only, depending on the year, it varies, but there's in my case. In 1981, there was only 13 out of the 50 guys there. There was only 13 what they called spring training openings, which were the top 13 of that 50 would get one of those assignments, and I got one of those assignments. So I was in the top 13 of all the classes that year, which is a huge accomplishment. But then that just puts you into the lower minor leagues, and now you have a whole new set of things that you got to do. You got to try to move yourself up through the minor leagues. A player can, if he has a great first half in a long A league or something, they may promote him to Triple A, or a guy does really well in Double A. Next thing you know, in September, maybe he's getting a call up to the big leagues. For umpires, you have to work at every level. In other words, you're A ball, you have to work Double A, you have to work Triple A. You can't just skip a league. And then once you get to AAA, if you get to AAA, because that's again just to get to that situation, it weeds out a lot of guys who quit or are released. Then in AAA, now the major league supervisors are watching you and sending you to maybe winter ball or to fall, what they call fall league, and you're a prospect if you get that far, and eventually, hopefully, you get that call that you were talking about, where you're going to the big leagues. My situation was I was getting ready for a spring training game in Sarasota on April 1st, 1986, and the clubhouse attendant came in and said, "Hey, you have a phone call." It's about 20 minutes before game time. I was working the plate that day, and I went in, and Dick Butler, who was then the American League supervisor, said, I certainly hope you have lead in your shoes before this spring training game." And I said, "Well, why is that, Mr. Butler?" And he said, "Well, because as of this moment, you are now on the American League staff." That is unbelievable. I mean, the feeling you get that you made it. You went through this entire process, and you've been selected to be a major league umpire. It's such an accomplishment. And again, now you're back to square one. You gotta show them that they made the right choice. You got to show your new big league umpire partners. You got to obviously show the players and managers and coaches and media and fans that you're a competent umpire. And that's a whole other process. But it's an unbelievable feeling, and you have them a few times during the steps. So you get out of umpire school, getting to the advanced school, getting an assignment, getting through the minor leagues, and then finally getting to the big leagues.
Yeah, and Dale, I got to tell you, one thing that surprised me a little bit is, and I think this would surprise our listeners, is I know one of the primary things that forced you to retirement was I saw you suffered 4 concussions.
Yeah.
And that, I never would have thought of that for an umpire to suffer that many concussions. Is it all from being hit by a ball? Was it collisions? What was the principle?
All 4 of mine were behind the plate with foul balls that hit me just the right place in the mask. 3 out of the 4 were foul balls that came and hit me kind of in the chin area of the mask, and that's a tough place to take it. When you see the video, anytime you see a video of an umpire getting hit in the mask, if you see the ball go directly down, it just kills the ball and just drops. That means basically that umpire has just absorbed the entire impact. If you see the ball glancing off and back to the screen or something, a lot of times that looks more dramatic because the ball's flying out or whatever. But in most cases, that means the mask and the pads absorbed some of that, and you've only absorbed a little bit of it. You can still be concussed by it, but it's not as big of impact.
So
that's what happened to me, and I just decided to I'd had enough of that.
All right, well, Dale, thanks. So we're gonna go to break. Dale Scott, recently retired Major League Baseball umpire. I'm your host, Mark Altman, and when we come back, we're going to talk about relationships and arguments with players, umpires, fans alike. We'll be right back. Welcome back to ICommunicate, Finding Your Voice. I'm your host, Mark Altman, here with Dale Scott. And Dale, I want to get right into this second segment. I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite topics. I work with companies and individuals, emotional intelligence. And boy, do umpires need to have emotional intelligence. And I want to start with something that I think a lot of fans wonder about all the time. And that is when you're behind home plate, and a player shows you up, whether it be body language, primarily body language, or whether they have some choice words for you or whatever. I mean, you're human. So you can say that doesn't impact how you feel about them. Doesn't it get under your skin in terms of, don't you think psychologically it impacts when you're going to give a player the benefit of the doubt with a ball or a strike? So just talk about what that's like in those situations.
Well, yes, we are human, and that's obviously something you can't change. But as an umpire, there's a couple things. First of all, we look at players. First of all, every game is different, or every game is new, I should say. If you have the night before you have an ejection with a manager or a player, the next game it's a clean slate. You're starting new again. But as umpires, there are certain players and certain managers that seem to be verbalize and question much more often and frequently than others. There are certain players, managers that get ejected more than others. It's just their personality or how they approach things or whatever. So as an umpire, I relate it to kind of like a law enforcement officer, for example, is that you have a suspect that has a long rap sheet, so you know that this guy has done these things before. So you take that into consideration versus a player that doesn't get ejected very often, doesn't get in arguments very often, and now maybe he is questioning a pitch or a play or whatever. You may give that player that doesn't argue that much a little more leeway, because it's not his norm. It's not what he normally does. Where a guy with what I would call a rap sheet, you may cut him off a little bit quicker because he does this all the time, and the outcome. He's not going to agree with you, and he's going to verbalize that, and he's going to let you know about it, and you may cut off that argument a little bit quicker. That being said, automatics are automatics no matter who does it. If they say the choice words, if they can say that pitch was blankety blankety blank, and okay, you don't like the pitch, and whatever. But if they say that pitch was outside your blankety blank,
Yep.
he has now just personalized it to me, and he will be ejected.
Okay.
And they know that. I mean, they know what they can say and not say. And then sometimes you just have a guy that he doesn't personalize it, but he just continues on to the point where, okay, obviously, something's got to happen.
Right.
We got to move on. So and you have that.
So Dale, we have a caller for you. Steve has a question for you, if it's okay.
Sure.
Hey, how's it going? I was just wondering what your most memorable game you ever umpired was.
Well, I worked about 103 games short of 4,000, so I had quite a few. But the highlight ones for me is obviously my first major league game ever, my first game behind the plate ever, my first playoff game, my first World Series, my first All-Star game. All those firsts are ones that are that are special. Be honest, I mean that first World Series I had in 1998 when the Yankees swept San Diego. I remember Game 1 was in Yankee Stadium, and I was at first base, excuse me, I was at second base, and Tim Cheetah was in the left field line. Tim and I went to umpire school the same year. We worked together in the minor leagues, and this is our first World Series. And I remember before the first pitch when they were warming up, and we were standing out there, and Tim and I we looked around, and I said, we used to work in the California League and the Dominican Republic, and we looked around and said, Tim, we've come a long way, dude. We're about ready to start the World Series here in Yankee Stadium, and this is insane. It was a real moment for us because it's such an accomplishment, and it's one that you always hoped and dreamed if you got into professional baseball you'd make it to the World Series. You chose to work the World Series, and here it was coming to fruition. So that was a huge deal.
So, Dale, one of the questions I want to ask you is about the concept of a makeup call. So before the instant replay system went into effect, if you were to see an instant replay at a game and you could see, and the fans, you hear the fans see the replay and the big groan comes out from the crowd, and you missed a call, or even if it wasn't the fans, you kind of missed a ball strike call. Explain, how do you look at the makeup call? I mean, is that a legit thing where umpires, you're keeping in the back of your mind, you might have screwed one up and you're going to make it up? I mean, what's the mindset around a makeup call?
Well, first of all, umpire, your mindset as an official is not, man, I missed that pitch, well, I'm going to make sure I give him one next time. That's just not how it works. Here's why. Because if I legitimately missed a pitch, it doesn't help things to compound it by missing another one in his favor. I mean, because now, at first you got the pitcher mad at you because you called what should have been a strike a ball. Well, now I call what should have been a ball a strike, and now I got the hitter pissed off. So now I've got both teams screaming at me, and your credibility is going right down in the gutter. You hate to miss calls, obviously. You hate to miss pitches. You hate to miss plays. But you don't go with the concept of, well, gosh, I called that guy out. You know what? Next one I'm going to call him safe. Or the next close one I'm going to call him safe. This just isn't in your mindset. That's not how you operate. Now, there are times, and you see this, in other sports also, a foul here or whatever, that it happens, you have a close play that maybe is questionable, and 3 pitches later you have another close play that goes the other way, and they go, oh, well, that's obvious a makeup call. Well, no,
yeah, exactly.
It's really not, and it's just that's not our concept. And you're saying about you hear the fans moan. I remember distinctly early in my career, I was in the Kingdome. I had a steal play at third base that went against Seattle. I called whoever it was out. There was that delay, and then you hear all, as they see it in the monitors up in the stands, and then there was just this boo, and I'm thinking, and I thought I had the play right, and I hear that, and I'm going, oh, man, obviously I must have missed it. Well, after the game's over, I went in to look at it. You couldn't tell. The angle they had, you couldn't tell at all. You have to understand, fans look at plays with their heart and not with their head, and that's fine. That's what fans are supposed to do. But we don't look at it that way. We look at it, black and white. Can I see the tag? Was the tag before the runner, before the base, or did he miss the tag? Or if it's an angle that you can't tell, then guess what? You can't tell. You can't just guess and make it up. But fans will do that. If they can't tell, that went our way. Well, we don't know if it went your way because you can't tell. But so I learned real early in my career, just because a reaction may be negative doesn't necessarily mean that you were wrong. A lot of times maybe it did, but what I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily mean that you were wrong. They're gonna see the play the way they want to see it.
Yeah, and Dale, one of the things I think in from a communication perspective, I'm a freelance sports writer for Associated Press, and I remember the first times I used to go into baseball locker rooms and see the players after the games, and I think it'd be very surprising to fans how much these guys take wins and losses to heart. And, one question I'd have for you is, when there is a situation, whenever someone's disappointed or their expectations aren't met or there's something to blame, everybody always looks for a scapegoat. And very often the umpires are the scapegoat. Sure. What's it like in an umpire's locker room after a game if an umpire does believe they made a mistake? And would fans be surprised at how much umpires take it to heart? What is that like?
Well, I think fans would be shocked how we take these things, because one of the criticism, or one of the things I hear from fans, he missed it, but what does he care? He doesn't win or lose. He just goes home after the game. He doesn't care. Trust me, we care. We're our worst, our own worst critics, quite frankly. Again, things are different with replay, but you still have pitches or things that aren't reviewable. But the point is that if you miss a play, after the game, you go and you look at it in the locker room, and first, an official has to be honest with himself. Okay, I have worked with a few officials that they'll look at a play, and to me, it's pretty obvious. He missed the play. The tag was made or whatever. And the calling official will look at it and go, oh, yeah, you can't tell, or, yeah, this, and it's like, you're not really looking at this honestly, We make mistakes. It happens. And what I try to do, and what I tell guys, that I talk to, groups I talk to, and umpire official camps and whatever, is that don't dwell on the mistake. Take the mistake, look at it, dissect it, point by point, why that mistake was made. Was my angle bad?
Dale, hold that thought. We'll continue this right after the break. Thanks. Welcome to ICommunicate, Finding Your Voice. And Dale, I'm sorry we had to cut you short there, that last segment. I would petition the radio station for no commercials, but then we wouldn't be here, so that wouldn't work really well.
I gotcha.
So Dale, I want to phase into how the umpiring landscape has changed in instant replay, but I want to talk about something a little different, and that is one of the fascinating things about baseball to me has always been it's one of the few things in life you can do and be successful 30% of the time as a hitter and be considered famous. And in umpiring, one of the big changes for fans has been always seeing the strike zone on TV now. So when the pitch comes in, the fan can now see whether it's officially a strike or a ball, where prior it was more of a subjective thing. And now when the mistake was made. And when I think of over the course of the game, how many hundreds of opportunities there are for an umpire to miss something, talk about the scrutiny of the ball strike component. Because instant replay and out safe calls are one thing, but ball strikes, that's a whole different dynamic.
Well, there's an art to calling balls and strikes, and there's a science. It's like umpiring. There's a science of umpiring and art of umpiring. Here's what I mean. The strike zone is a three-dimensional rectangular box, so to speak. Of course, you've got your constant, which is the width of the plate, which is 17 inches, and then you have your inconsistent high-low, because it all depends on the hitter. How tall the hitter is, how he approaches the ball, and all of that stuff. The problems we have with the pitch track systems that people see on television is that, a couple things. First of all, the high-low never seems to change much, and the internal system that Major League Baseball uses to look at every pitch that we call is scrutinized and evaluated, and the internal evaluation, it takes, after the game's over, it takes a technician for each at-bat and each called pitch to draw the high-low lines for that hitter, because it's not as simple as just saying, this guy's 6'2", so here's his line. It's the strike zone, the high-low strike zone when he's attempting to hit the ball. So, some guys crouch a little more, some guys are up a little more. I mean, that could vary pitch by pitch as far as that goes.
That makes sense.
Television doesn't have a chance to do that in real time and show the pitch. So the high-low is a little suspect. But okay, just so we know that. The other thing is, I am not sure how they're calibrated as far as the inside-outside. The plate's 17 inches. The ball is another 2 1/4 inch in diameter, and by rule, if any part of the ball is over any part of the plate, that's within the high-low, that's a strike. So it could be on the very edge of the ball, is on the very edge of the outside corner. That actually means that plate is extended about 2 inches on each side, because it's hitting over the plane of the plate. I'm not sure what the calibration is on these television ones. I don't know if when you see a pitch that's just outside that line, I'm not sure if that means it is outside that buffer of 2 1/4 inches, or if it's outside just the edge of the plate, which would mean it's probably a good pitch. Because it's still within that 2 1/4. So not to get technical, but those, when we're talking about pitches and the differences between 1/4 inch, or less, those things are important. So yes, it gives you a facsimile, the viewer of the location of the pitch. It's not as accurate as the internal stuff that MLB uses to evaluate us, and sometimes it can be a little. To me, a little confusing. When you see a pitch that's just off the line on the outside corner, and people think, what's he looking at? My God, I mean that's way outside. Well, that's not way outside. You're talking about a 92-mile-an-hour fastball that might be, an eighth or 1/4 inch outside. That's pretty. We're pretty good at that.
So,
do we miss pitches? Yes, but we're pretty good at that.
So, Dale, let me ask you this. Let me be direct on something. I'm a traditionalist. I mean, to hear an umpire call a ball and a strike and have umpires as a part of Major League Baseball, I wouldn't want to change it. But I'm sitting here thinking to myself, geez, isn't this really, this whole instant replay thing, it's just inevitable where umpires are going to be phased out completely, because why not just have a person down on the field announcing whether it's a ball or a strike based on electronics and calling out and safe? Like, why do we even need umpires going forward?
Well, there has been talk, and there has been some that advocate that the computer, should, the pitch track system should call pitches, and that they could do it now if they wanted to, and just have a red light and a green light, and the green light's a ball and a red light's a strike or whatever. But when I was saying that there's an art to umpiring and a science, here's a good example why be careful what you wish for type thing. By rule, any pitch that enters any part of the strike zone shall be considered a strike. Well, if you have a pitcher that at the very front edge of home plate where the strike zone starts, and at the very outside corner of the plate, a ball that's a slider or some pitch that with a lot of movement hits that nicks that very part of that zone, but by the time the catcher catches it, it's 2 or 3 inches outside and almost on the ground because it's moving so much. By rule, that's a strike, and those pitch track systems, if they're calibrated correctly, it'll see that they hit that part of the strike zone, and it will call that a strike. That's the science of umpiring. The art of umpiring is no umpire is going to call that a strike, and no player is going to want that to be a strike because it's technically it's a strike, but it's not a hittable pitch, and it's a pitch that the catcher is lunging down and almost catching on the ground. That's a kind of an extreme example, but it's an example to show you that there is a human element in there that deciphers what is acceptable in this level of baseball and what may technically be. Technically a coach is supposed to be in the coaching box, but do we make them do that? No, of course, unless the other team complains that he's stealing signs or something, then we make both teams stay in the coach's box. But so you have rules, but the rules are to be interpreted and to the level of play and what's going on. And if you have a machine calling pitches, you would have those types of things happening. Not to mention, or I haven't even mentioned the fact that the plate umpire has a lot more responsibilities than just pitches. There's hit batsmen, there's catcher interference, there's fair foul situations, there's swing, check swings. There's all kinds of stuff that a pitch track system is not going to call. So, be careful what you wish for. Do you want a video game or do you want a game of baseball where humans play it? I always joke to people, if you want a video game, well, then if the bases are loaded and one out and there's a beautiful, just perfect ground ball to the shortstop, an easy double play, and he lets it go through his legs, do you say, well, after further review, he usually makes that call. We're going to give him a double play. Of course you're not going to do that. I mean, the game's played by humans. So I think replay is good and it corrects obvious mistakes and stuff, but if you think you can use replay and computers and whatever for everything, I think you're going to get results that you're not going to want.
All right, Dale, we have a caller. Wayne has a question for you.
Sure.
Hey, Mark and Dale, how are you?
Good, Wayne. How are you?
Good.
Excellent. So you were just talking about the human element of umpiring, officiating, and as human beings, we all have some people that we like and some people that we don't like, and I'm sure over the years of umpiring, you got to know players pretty well and like some and didn't like others. And how hard is that to not cloud your judgment as you're making a close call?
Well, frankly, it's not that hard. When I, for example, if I'm working first base and I have a bang play at first, I'm not thinking, well, who was the runner? Oh, that's right. Yeah, I don't like that guy much. But the shortstop, I don't like him very. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna call him safe. I mean, these things just aren't in your psyche. I mean, there are players that are more difficult to work than others. Absolutely. There are some players that are easier to work than others. But when it comes down to it, the way we're evaluated on every pitch that we call for the entire season. We're evaluated on every play that we call the entire season. We're evaluated even on plays that we have no calls that maybe we should have made a call, like an obstruction or something that we didn't call, and that kind of stuff. So you don't have the luxury to just pick and choose when you want to have a correct call or when you want to stick it to some player or whatever. You understand the personalities, and you understand there's certain players, there's certain managers, there's certain teams that are just difficult to work. They constantly are questioning everything you do or anything that's close, and it gets kind of old. But that's just their makeup. There's in the business world, there's certain clients that aren't a lot of fun, and some that are much more fun. But they're clients, and you still have to try to do the best you can to keep their business or whatever. And as for us, the bottom line is we want to get pitches and plays right. We don't want to be the story. Sometimes we are. Sometimes we are because we're doing our job. Sometimes we are because we make mistakes. But the bottom line is you just want to do your job, and it regardless of who is the runner or the hitter or the pitcher.
So Wayne, thank you for the call. Dale, we'll be coming back for our next segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about a game-changing moment Dale has had in the last few years. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to ICommunicate, Finding Your Voice. I'm your host, Mark Altman, here with recently retired umpire Dale Scott. Dale, talk about a resume. 12 division series, 6 league championship series, 3 All-Star games, 3 World Series, 3 no-hitters. Just really amazing what you accomplished over the course of your career, and clearly the respect you had from your peers to get those opportunities. And we have another call, Dale. Dave has a question for you. Hi, Dave.
Yes. Hey, Mark. Hey, Dale. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Dave.
Appreciate the service, Dale. Umpiring is a thankless job sometime.
You got that right.
And my question is probably a little similar to Wayne's, but on the other side of it, because I know when I was coaching, and not just baseball, but any sport, I always tried to teach my players not to whine to the umpires, because I always felt like it wouldn't necessarily get you the next call, but a lot of people feel like if they constantly complain that it's going to get you to look more at what they're complaining about. And I'd just like to know your take on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're trying to get a point across because you think an umpire is, not calling the high pitch or whatever, there's ways of going about doing that are much more, positive and productive than than whining and screaming from the bench. And you're exactly right as far as the fact that, complaining to the officials isn't the best way to, or if you think that you're going to intimidate them so they're just going to make calls your way, that's, usually it's the opposite effect. They're frustrated by your, constant badgering. That first of all, it's the cry wolf syndrome. Now, when you really have a bitch, it's not heard as cleanly, so to speak, because you've bitched about everything. The other thing is that, if a guy's constantly on me, if there's a situation that could go either way, there's a possibility it may not go your way, because that's just human nature. I'm not saying you're cheating. I'm saying there are certain plays or pitches or rulings that, quite frankly, could go either way. It's that close, a borderline pitch or whatever. Now, I'm not going to sit here and think, well, if I get a close play, Coach A has been nice and Coach B hasn't, I'm going to go against Coach B. But you're not fulfilling what supposedly you're doing by complaining to officials constantly about things that you're going to get the next play. Now, if you want to point out something that you think the officials maybe been lacking that game or whatever, talk to them between innings when you're not raising the attention of all the fans and everybody. If you have a lineup change, go out there and get a lineup change. Hey, by the way, I really think those pitches are good pitches. You're calling them high. Yeah, I'm calling them high. Well, maybe if you just take a extra look at it for the dugout, they look pretty good.
So Dale, that begs a question of, social media has played such a huge role in fan involvement now. I would love to know, before social media played such a big role, if you knew you made a mistake during a game, would you ever seek out the player after the game? Because now umpires and referees, I don't even think they should be accountable, because now players out of frustration are saying such and such umpire told me he blew the call. So, but back in the day before that happened, would that be your style, to seek out a player to apologize and say I'm human?
Well, it depends on the situation and the player, quite frankly. I mean, at the big league level, you get to know these guys in a professional sense, because you see them off and on all season and for several years in a row or whatever. There are certain players or certain manager that if I made a mistake, he's the type of guy that I could say, just nonchalantly when he's running back out to the outfield or whatever, hey, so-and-so, that pitch last night, it might have been a little bit outside. I took a look at it or whatever. Hey, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate it, or that kind of thing. Or you'll have players say, hey, Dale, I think that pitch is outside. You called out on strikes. That pitch, I said, no, I got it on the plate. Will you take a look at it? And I go, okay, sure, I will. So I'll look at it, and after the game, the next day, I might say, hey, I took a look at it. That's a pretty good pitch, or I took a look at it. Yeah, it might have been just off or whatever. But you can only do that to certain guys. You can only do it a certain amount of times. If you're consistently doing that, you have no credibility, because now everybody just says, well, he apologized for everything. Obviously, he's missing all these plays.
Right.
And then there's certain players and managers that I would never tell them that I made a mistake, because they turn around and use it to bury you. And so so it's a pick and choose type of thing.
Makes sense. Dale, so before we transition to our next topic, I have one other question. Over the course of their career, or your career, were there certain players and managers, maybe if you could identify one or two, that you really connected with, that they were your kind of guy and you really appreciated either their work ethic or their style of communication? Who were those players and managers for you?
Well, a couple players that are no longer playing, but you see Harold Reynolds on television all the time. Harold, when he was playing, he was very fair. If he thought you missed a pitch, he would do it in a proper way without raising everybody's awareness that he's mad at you or disagrees with you. The vast majority of players are just out there to play the game. You have a select few that are just kind of a pain all the time. They're very consistent. They just don't believe you, and it's not just me. It's a lot of guys. And then you have a select few that go out of their way to be really polite and personable. But the vast majority of guys, they're there to do a job. They're focusing on their job. They may disagree with you here and there. They may question you here and there, but they do it in a professional way. And we have no problem talking like a catcher who we deal with all the time. He doesn't like a call that you have. He thinks it's a strike. If he throws the ball back and then nonchalantly just says, hey, Dale, I had that on the plate. Where'd you have it or whatever? That's fine. We'll talk to anybody. It's the ones that like you said earlier, body language. They drop the shoulders. It's like they've just been shot or something. They hold the ball. Maybe they don't say a word, but they're making it quite obvious they think that you screwed up. You're not going to get a good two-way conversation with somebody like that because they're not wanting a conversation. They're wanting to blame you and scapegoat you for whatever. And so the communication skills between you and that player or you and that manager aren't going to be very good.
So, Dale, in a final thought on this before we transition, are you, from an emotional intelligence perspective, have you always had the skill set to, and obviously you have your moments where you get frustrated, but from a finding your voice communication, you've always been able to manage your emotions pretty well when people trigger you or frustrate you, you're able to kind of, would your family say that? Would your friends say that? Is that universally who you are?
Well, you'll find a lot of officials in whatever sports are very kind of black and white oriented. There's not a lot of nuance. You're either out or safe. You're either, it's either a strike or a ball. It's not like, well, he's out, but he kind of got his hand in, and I was going to slide. I mean, you just don't have time to deal with that. Now, you learn as you progress through the minor leagues and in the big leagues. You learn mentally how to deal with things. I remember from umpire school, the late John McSherry, my chief instructor, said, "You're the only guy, or your crew are the only guys that are paid to be in control out there. The players aren't paid to be in control. They'll be screaming or whatever, carry on. Their emotions are carrying on. The fans aren't there to be in control. The media supposedly is in control. You can have real biased media one way or the other, especially with home broadcast teams or whatever. But my point is, you're the only people out there that are being paid to maintain calm and control. Some days it's a lot easier than others, but that's what we are supposed to do. And if your emotions start getting revved up, you're setting the tone that it's okay, and you need just to be, calm, take a deep breath, and just sort through the issue and come up with a resolution.
Well, and it was funny, Dale. Last night I actually noticed during the telecast where there was a play late in the game where Mookie Betts threw out Tony Kemp. And the umpire made a great call, such a bang play. And the announcers, I really noticed, the announcers made a big point to say, well, what a fabulous job by the second base umpire. And as they were talking about it, I heard, boy, you don't often hear that.
No, you don't. And quite frankly, some of the networks are better than others. TBS has always been relatively good at pointing out, instead of just pointing out mistakes, they also point out, hey, that was a tough call. He was right on top of it, or look at the angle he had on this, or whatever. Other broadcast entities like to stir up a little controversy. They rarely point out a good call or a good positioning or a tough call that was made correctly, but they can't wait to point out whenever some type of mistake was made. So again, I guess it goes with the territory. You just do what you got to do, and you try to block out all that stuff.
So Dale, I guess one last question I would ask you. We're gonna wrap up the show, and then Dale and I are going to continue to talk, and we'll release the footage on social media. But Dale, one last question before we wrap up the show. Question is advice for umpires, referees out there. What is it if you're aspiring to be a referee, even at a high school or college level for that matter, or minor league level? What are 2 or 3 ingredients? If someone were to say to you, boy, Dale, if I want to pursue this calling, what are, in our last minute here, what would the ingredients be?
Well, get involved, and there is a shortage of high school and below level officials all throughout the country in all the different sports. So I encourage people, if you've thought about it, look into it and try it out and see if it's something that you enjoy doing. Give it 2 or 3 years. Don't just give it 1 year. Usually, but watch veteran guys work. You can learn things watching other guys work games. Not only things that you can incorporate and you should do, but maybe some things that that's a good idea not to do that. That didn't work, and that type of stuff. To help give you the experience that you're wanting to get and learning on. It's officiating. It's an art. There's an art to it. Okay. We make it look pretty easy. Yep. But it's not that easy.
All right, Dale. Thank you. Stay with me on the phone. We'll be back right after the break. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for ICommunicate, Finding Your Voice. Have a great afternoon. All right, we're back with Dale Scott. Dale, it's been really an enlightening hour about a lot of insight from your experience. And I want to transition now, Dale, to a decision you made a few years ago. And I have to tell you, I want to start with a headline I read on the internet because I think it speaks so much to the approach you took. It says, Major League Baseball umpire Dale Scott comes out as gay in the quietest way possible. And I got such a chuckle out of that because you very rarely see those two expressions together. So,
my closet door is very quiet.
Very quiet. So, Dale, just first want to talk a little bit about, what prompted this and, what it's been like since you made the decision to do so.
Well, first of all, the people I worked for at Major League Baseball, the people that signed my checks, the umpires that I worked with on the field, they all knew I was gay. They had known for years. So when I came out in December of 2014 publicly, that wasn't a big bombshell for them. Now, it was news to the teams and to the media and to the fans and that type of stuff. What prompted it was a few things. First of all, the year before that, November of 2013, I married Michael, my husband. But we in fact, last week we just celebrated our 32nd year together.
Congratulations!
Thank you very much. We had met in October of 1986, and so we officially were married the year before that I came out, and I thought, we've come so far as a community. We've gotten this marriage equality thing that 10 years earlier was about 60-40 against is now 60-40 in favor. I mean, the attitudes of the American public to this topic and it changed dramatically. And I thought, what is the point of all the work and everything that all these pioneers went through in our community to try to get us to this point, and me continuing in the closet. I just married somebody I've been with for the majority of my life, and it just didn't seem right. It didn't seem like that all this progress had been made, and I actually was able to get married. Yet I'm still denying who I am publicly, and I just thought it's time, and so it was something that I had thought about a little bit, but and let's face it, it was easier for me because I was a 20-plus year, 27-year veteran or whatever. I'd already worked, postseason. I was a crew chief, so it wasn't like I was trying to establish myself. I would have never even dreamed of this the first few years that I was in the big leagues, just because it would have, blown my mind, and it was a different time.
But Dale,
so that's what prompted it. I just thought it was time, and I went ahead and did it.
Okay, so a couple of thoughts. So first of all, I'm not giving that to you. It was easier for you. I mean, you're so humble about it. You make it sound so routine. But when we've seen Billy Beans of the world and Jason Collins in the NBA, and we've seen the scrutiny and the scuttlebutt come out, I don't care what stage you're at in your career, it still takes a lot of courage and a big risk. So I want to ask you: is this something? Did you know as a kid you were gay? Is it something you realized at some point in adulthood? When did you have this realization?
Well, as I look back on my, growing up in my childhood stuff, I kind of adopted the fact that I officially came out to myself when I was 19. But
okay.
Looking back, I was born this way. I mean, I remember as a kid having a crush on a neighborhood boy, and I didn't understand it, but it was natural for me. It just that was normal to me. But I didn't put a label on it, and I certainly was cognizant enough to know that I couldn't tell people about it. But that being said, it still was what I felt naturally. It wasn't forced. It wasn't. It just seemed right for me. I just also realized it wasn't something that I could express, and at that point. Finally, kind of like what I had talked about earlier, an official has kind of a black and white. They look at something and they deal with it. I just remember one day, it all just kind of I figured it all out. One day I looked in the mirror and I said, hey, you know what? Now I got it. I figured it out. You're gay, dude. You're gay. That's what you are. And so now, how are you going to deal with it? And I just refused to be somebody that was going to look in the mirror every day the rest of my life and lie to myself. And I wasn't going to lie to a woman and get married and have kids because society tells me that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to be true to myself. But I also realized, at that time, and this was, 1979, that I could not. Okay, I'm gay, and I'm okay with that, frankly. But I also understand that, I can't tell everybody. I can't just come out. I can't just, I'm going to have to what I call play the game. I got to play that little social game and those little white lies and deceptions, because that what I was not accepted socially.
So Dale, since you've done that. Since you came out in 2014, have any players, not looking for names, but have any players, umpires, coaches, professional athletes in other sports, have they contacted you and said, Dale, thank you so much, even because they're not courageous enough to do it? Have you had contact from those wishing they could and admiring you for doing so?
Well, the very first, I came out in December of 2014. In March of 2015, my very first spring training game, it was the Reds-Indians, and I remember about the third inning, I was over at third base, and Marlon Byrd was an outfielder for the Reds at that point. And he'd been around a long time. I'd known Marlon Byrd as, he's with several teams. And I remember he ran up, he goes, Dale, and he gave me this huge bear hug.
Oh, that's awesome.
He said, I am so proud of you, dude. I am so proud of you. He goes, at least, you're now free, man. You're free, and I'm so proud of you. And I didn't expect that at all. And it was really just a warm gesture, and it meant a lot to me. But that being said, that year I had him and about 3 other players said anything at all. I had one base coach that I'd known a long time that said, was how courageous and brave I was to come out on that stage. He said he had a nephew, his brother's son was gay, and he understood the complexities and the issues that dealt with, and he was really very warm words to me. And I had one trainer for one of the teams confide in me that he was gay and he wasn't out to the club afraid that he would lose. Next time his contract came up, he wouldn't be renewed. But so I had that happen. But I had a ton of emails that I got after this all came out, and it was from firefighters and policemen and soccer officials and football officials and all different officials, all different lines of work from all over the world that said, I am so happy to hear this. I'm so proud of you. I've been contemplating doing this myself. I'm not sure if I'm ready yet, but I'm a step closer because of your story and what you've done, and it kind of broke the barrier, or at least gave them some confidence that they may be able to do this at some point. And that means the world to me, because growing up, I didn't have anybody that I could look up to and say, hey, it's okay. I had to kind of go through those, as most guys and women have to, kind of had to go through those minefields, that obstacle course on your own and try to figure it all out. So it's been extremely positive, in my situation, and the negative comments that I've got, quite frankly, I haven't been to my face. I'm sure they're out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not naive, but it just wasn't something that's been, thrown in my face.
Okay, Dale, we're going to go to a very quick commercial. We'll be right back. But when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the term of role model. And I think in this case, what I want you to think about when we come back from the break is, if a professional Major League Baseball player were to contact you and say, hey, Dale, I'm thinking of coming out. You inspired me. When we come back from the break, I'd love to know how you would handle that situation and what you would guide them on to make their decision. So we'll be right back. Okay, so Dale, it's funny, when you think about the decision you made, it's not right for everybody, right? People have different levels of confidence and courage and so on and so forth. But what would be the criteria that you would give someone to think about for them to decide whether they should or shouldn't?
Well, coming out is such an extremely personal decision, and it's one, quite frankly, you can get maybe advice or from people you trust or people like me that have gone through this or whatever. But it really comes down, it's your decision, and you've got to make that based on your life and your circumstances. Some people are in extremely religious families. Some people are in areas of the country that this could be, quite frankly, a death sentence. Not to sound dramatic, but that's just true. Some people just aren't, in their work situation or whatever, just aren't comfortable doing it. So it's truly a personal decision that one has to make. In a perfect world, if every gay person came out, I think people would be stunned at how many people are gay in this, in their lives. Not only maybe friends or relatives, but also people that you see twice a week at the grocery store, or that you see once a month, or whatever. I mean, you would just be surprised at how many gay people there are. But that's something that someone has to make. And if someone approached me, a player or anybody, well, if it was in baseball and somebody approached me, I would answer whatever questions they had. As well as honestly as I could, excuse me, and I would certainly direct them to Billy Beane with Major League Baseball, who, as a player, an ex-player, but he was a player. He came out after he retired, and he would have insights that I wouldn't have, just dealing with a baseball clubhouse. So. Those are the things that I would do, and then let that person decide if it's something that, if they want to take that step or not.
So, Dale, I want to switch gears because there's something that I'm very passionate about, and I just don't get it. The word stigma is so powerful in our society, and so many people on a daily basis act upon fear and make decisions based on fear. And when I look at certain topics, especially at a childhood level, high school, well, let's use high school, for example, there's a stigma around mental health. Can you admit you're depressed, you're anxious? There's such a stigma around admitting that and owning up. There's a stigma around if you have a disorder, a learning disability, things like that. And now it's been such a hot button issue in our society about being transgender, and how so much has changed in awareness and recognition of transgender. What the heck's going on here, Dale? Like, why? Two-part question for you. First question is, how did not that I have anything against transgender, but how did the awareness and acceptance, which still has a long way to go with being transgender, how did that become more to the forefront than sexual preference? And part two of the question is, when you do come out, there's a decision to make, right? Because the decision is your religion, your family, and things like that. So you have to weigh, well, what's the impact of that? But what's the impact of not being who you are and the ramifications of that? And I'd like you to kind of weigh that. So what are your thoughts on both those questions?
Yeah, the transgender thing is, first of all, people oftentimes ridicule or bully because they don't understand, or it in a way scares them a little bit, or they just don't. It's so off their radar. I mean, quite frankly, I think most people just cannot fathom or understand why someone would feel that was born, or a male, but feels like they are a female and want to, transition into a female at some point. Most people just don't understand that. It's so foreign to them, and it's not that these feelings or transgender issues haven't been around for a long time, but they're now being, they're now in the public scheme much more, and so I think there's a lot of reaction to that. I'm the first to admit I don't understand. I'm learning about it myself because that's something that was not on my radar for many years, and that's a good way for us as a society to try to understand what is it that is motivating these people and why it's happening, is to educate ourselves on what it is, but. Sexual orientation, so to speak, is kind of in a way off the books, with this other stuff going on, because quite frankly, we've come so far. I'm not saying we're there yet, but we've come so far with marriage equality and with states and municipalities having laws, although we don't have a federal law for some of it, but with job discrimination or housing discrimination, that kind of stuff. So it's a constantly moving thing. It's a social issue. It's come a long way in a short period of time. Like I was talking about marriage equality stuff, that's almost amazing, a 10-year time where you can flip those numbers. That just doesn't happen that fast usually in social issues. But we're still learning. We're still educating the public. The public's being educated. There's people that truly may have a fear or a biased against something until they learn more about it and figure out that, hey, this, first of all, how does this affect me? I mean, it was kind of like the marriage equality thing. We're against it. Well, why? Well, if it's not a religious thing, and nobody in marriage equality was saying churches had to do this. They were saying it's a civil thing, and if the state, and the government's going to be in it, then they should not discriminate. But a lot of people that just, I'm against it. Well, then when they saw it was happening, and they met people, same-sex couples are married, and all of a sudden they go, well, what am I against it for? How does this affect me? This is not something that's going to ruin my life, or whatever. So I mean, there's just some awareness stuff that once people are more aware, it's not as scary or as taboo.
But Dale, how do you quantify, and no one, I can't live this, I can't know what this is like, by not being able to identify and admit who you are in your existence? How do you quantify the psychological impact that it has on the person where they're deciding, I better not say anything at all because of my family, religion, or whatever? There's a decision being made that would be worse than how it impacts you psychologically. How do you quantify that?
Well, you're absolutely right. Mark, there's teen suicides are, the numbers are unbelievably bad, and part of it's people being bullied because they're different, and part of it, and there are gay youth out there or trans youth that just don't have, they got to keep their secret. They're being bullied. Social media can be horrendous in this field with the cyberbullying, and they take their own lives, and it's tragic. And it's quite frankly, as a society, it's a disgrace, and we need to address that. Again, hopefully, we can get to be to a society that someone, once their awareness of who they are and what they are, and can be able to express that and be able to live and not lie about it, and have people that don't understand it, instead of just saying, okay, that's fine, live your life. I just don't understand it. Instead of, I don't understand it, and I'm going to bully the hell out of you, and I'm going to, because, you're different and I don't like you or whatever. We have a long, long way to go with that. You're right, though, by denying who you are and continually living a lie, for whatever reason it is, it can have huge psychological effects. I know even from when I was hiding myself early in my career, I was with Mike. We would have a week off. We'd come back after a week off. I'm working with three partners. Partner A, my wife and I went to the coast. And partner B, we took the kids and went to the partner C. And hey, what'd you do? I couldn't say, well, Mike and I went to this, and Mike and I did this. I say, took the dog to the coast, hung out with some friends. I mean, you can't share part of your life, because if you do, you're opening yourself up to who you are, and that's very difficult to do. To have to do that, and it's not, quite frankly, it's not healthy. And so, again, when I say it's a personal choice to come out, when you're making that choice to do it or not to do it, you have to, as an individual, factor in the fact that if you don't come out, you have an outlet. Like, I had an outlet. The baseball was not the outlet, but when I was home, I had a lot of gay friends. My family knew, so it wasn't like I was a complete lie in my entire life. My entire existence. It was at certain times, and that's eventually I didn't have to do that. But
so,
if somebody has an outlet, it helps. But if you're completely boxed into where you're not telling anybody and you're holding the thing, that is not healthy, and that does not help.
Agreed.
Down the road.
So Dale, we're going to finally have our last segment, and we're going to be back. Welcome back to ICommunicate, Finding Your Voice. I'm your host, Mark Altman, here with recently retired umpire Dale Scott. Dale, we're gonna in our last segment here, we're gonna cover a mishmash of topics, but I do want to ask you one other question to continue our discussion. I'm going to give you a fun visualization. So let's say your favorite state of Oregon. I know you're a big Oregon Ducks fan. Let's say your favorite state of Oregon contacts you and says, Dale, we're going to put you in charge of the Department of Education, and we want to know what you would do to increase awareness, acceptance, understanding around human beings in general. And you had an ability, Dale, to put something in schools to have an impact. Any thoughts, if you had that power, what you would choose?
Well, it would be great if you could have that magic wand or whatever, but I would hope that, a couple of things. I would hope that we can try, and not just with sexual orientation, but just with a lot of different people that have a speech impediment, or people that have some kind of that's not quote unquote normal. The bullying and the ridicule that you face in schools it can be so damaging, and also on social media. I would love to be able to somehow have a curriculum, a attitude, a direction that our education and our schools could do to help try to alleviate it, to help kids that aren't quote unquote normal, to help them understand how damaging they can be to these people, how damaging they can hurt these people from not only now but for years down the road, for the rest of their lives, and be able to blend society together where we just I hate to say it, but so can't we just all get along?
Yeah, right.
Can't we just understand that people are different, and if you're not if you're not my certain look or certain religion or certain whatever, then you're different, and I don't like you. You should be banned or whatever. It's very damaging. I don't know the answers to it, Mark, but somehow that's the type of curriculum or type of direction I'd love to be able to install.
All right, well, Dale, just so you know, I'm going to petition Oregon to put you in this position, so you're going to have that pressure, just so you know. All right, Dale, a couple last questions. First of all, we're going to switch gears altogether. I just want to quickly touch upon something. I want to talk about scandal, and in this case, I want to talk about, you're familiar with what happened to NBA referee Tim Donaghy, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then, of course, we know what happened with Pete Rose. And so I'm just curious, do you see that in terms of, do you get approached? Do you hear stories of players, coaches, umpires? Not that anybody's cheating, but is that temptation there in baseball around cheating, gambling, throwing games? Because aside from Pete Rose, we really haven't heard much about it.
Well, in my 32 years in the big leagues and 5 years in the minor leagues, 37 years of professional baseball, I was never approached. I was never. I was never had quote unquote those temptations or whatever. From day one in umpire school, and I know from basically day one to a rookie player in the lower minor leagues as they join an organization, it is preached. Even more than drugs, although drugs obviously is preached too, that you don't do them, illegal ones. But you're preached about gambling and about the integrity of the game, and especially with umpires, we are the integrity of the game, and it is us to uphold the integrity. And so it's such a from day one such a huge no to even have those thoughts. It's just against everything that you are you brought into as an umpire in professional baseball. It's against everything that we have. I do remember back in the 80s, sometime there was inadvertently, the umpires didn't know. There was a couple of umpires that a guy actually in Boston had befriended them, and over time, and one day at Fenway, one of the resident agents, who is a local police officer that MLB hires, they call them resident agents. They're there to help both teams and umpires in any issues that may come up in that city. Happened to see this gentleman walking with the umpires, or a couple of the umpires, just talking or whatever. He went to the umpires later on. He said, "Do you know who that is?" He said, "That's Joe Smith, whatever." You go, no, but you know what he does? I said, no. I've known him. How long have you known him? Maybe a year and a half. He goes, has he ever approached you about anything? Well, no. He goes, well, he's a mafia guy. He's bad news. and now this gentleman had never approached or asked the umpires to do anything illegal, but oftentimes they groom you, or they become good friends with you and through time, and then they might have approach you in some way to do something. That never happened, but because of this RA and the investigations, they were able to nip that in the bud, if that was going to happen at all. I'm not saying it would have. I'm just saying this guy is a prime candidate to, that might do something like that. So that being said, I've never heard of it happening. Tim Donaghy's situation set back officials 50 years. I mean, it was one of the worst things that could happen to not just the NBA, but to every official, professional official, especially just because now suddenly everybody thinks, oh, they're all crooked, or they're all being, or whatever, and it's so against our grain, it really hurt us, and it took us and is taking us years to try to get some of that back, the credibility.
So, Dale, just in wrapping up, let's talk about integrity. You talk about McGuire and Clemens and Bonds and Sosa. So let me just put your feet to the fire. Do those guys belong in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I'm not trying to dodge the question, but it's certainly not for me to say. I mean, I don't have a say in it. Here's what I can tell you. There was an era in baseball where this was happening, and not everybody was doing it. And I totally understand. Look at a guy like Ken Griffey. Ken Griffey has never been accused, or no one is, really, as far as I know, there was never ever a hint that Ken Griffey cheated at all, steroid-wise or any of that stuff. So there are players in that era that did not do this, and it is unfair to them to have all these astronomical numbers that are tainted because of pharmaceuticals. So I understand where a player like him or and others like him would say, hey, no, they shouldn't be in because they cheated. They cheated me. They cheated the game. But I also see the side where, this was happening, whether baseball knew it or not, or once they knew it, they started to try to deal with it. Now I think they're very good at it. I think they were very slow to the table at the time for various reasons. It's a long debate on that. Let me just go off the rails a little bit. I think with Pete Rose, I think he's kind of served his time. I think he's under, one of his problems was he vehemently denied, and he instead of accepting responsibility and trying to be a little bit remorseful, he didn't do that. I understand that push to get him in. His numbers weren't tainted because of drugs or some pharmaceuticals. He was tainted because of what he did gambling-wise. I could see him getting in the Hall of Fame at some point. The other guys, it's a decision that's got to be made. I think as time goes on, they may trickle in, but I can't say for sure.
All right, Dale, last question. You've been awesome. So I got to ask you, of the 4 teams left in the playoffs, I want to know who you're rooting for and why. And before you answer, just remember where the show is taking place today. Hint, hint.
I have a lot of friends in Boston. It was one of my favorite cities to go to. The Boston fans, for the most part, I think, liked me.
I love for the most part. That was great.
There are certainly times they did not, and I understand awesome. That. That's the life of an umpire. I think you're. Well, first of all, I think the best, quite frankly, the best 2 teams are Boston and Houston. Quite frankly,
I agree.
I think the American League, and Oakland had a heck of a second half.
They did.
And, the playoff teams in the American League were pretty good teams. But that being said, I don't have a favorite. I'm assuming that the broadcaster Fox would love to see a Boston LA just for the markets.
You bet. You bet.
I kind of pull for Milwaukee. I've got friends in all these cities, but Milwaukee, the smallest market, smallest payroll. Well, I don't know if it's the smallest payroll, but the smallest market.
Yep.
in MLB, and that would be a David and Goliath story. But as an umpire, I'm not going to pick anyone.
And you're the last person I thought would be politically correct. Can I just say that? Just throwing that out there.
Well, let me say, anytime in the playoffs or World Series, you know what I pick? I pick the umpires. Let's just have a
oh boy
series and move forward.
Hey, listen, Neil, go Ducks. And you know what? I just want to tell you that let's keep Damon Lillard and C.J. McCollum in Portland, right?
Please.
Yep.
Please. We just lost Paul Allen, which is
so sad.
A tough loss here in Portland and for the whole NBA and NFL and philanthropy. I can't say that word. He gives a lot of money out.
Yeah, there you go. So, Dale,
the point is, yes, we need to keep those guys here. We won a championship for the Blazers.
So I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I feel, even though I've never met you, I really appreciate getting to know you and look forward to having the opportunity to meet you at some point. And thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you.
Have a great day, Dale. Thanks a lot. ICommunicate, finding your voice. We will see you next time. Have a great day.